Colourful Radio.
Good morning and welcome to South Central with me, Lisa Bent. I'm here till 1 p.m. Stay with me. Continue to stay with me. The two tracks you just heard were Nobody Greater by Rasheed Mitchell and Work to Do by the Isley brothers. And that track is very apt because today we are talking about relationships because Christmas is around the corner and this is the season of visitors, gatherings and goodwill. So by understanding your dynamics, you place yourself in a better position to respond as opposed to overreacting or just reacting in general. There is no main theme today because for this topic, it requires all of the self-central core conditions, which, as you know by now, are self-awareness, self-acceptance and self-love. Rasheed Ogunlaru, as usual, will be joining me at 11:25. He is the life coach and I'm sure he'll be dropping great gems as usual. So make sure you stay with me. And again, as always, if you have any questions for him or if you're not sure about something or if you want to fill something out, you can tweet at Colourful Radio. You can call on 0203 475 6878 or you can email me via the Colourful Radio website. You can ask a question, I can ask Rasheed and you can know the answer. So yeah, get thinking. Also, we're still doing Appreciation Sunday, so please let me know who or what you appreciate. And the main question for today is, Christmas is the season of goodwill. Is it a good time to heal rifts? And further to that, if you know there are rifts to heal, are you willing to step forward and reach out? Those are the questions today. Let me know.
Colourful Radio.
So that was Can't Wait by Laurone McClendon. And can you wait for Christmas? I mean, it's really fast approaching. So it was really, really fast approaching. So, can you wait? Can't you wait? I'm now joined by the life coach, Rasheed Ogunlaru. Morning, Rasheed.
A very good morning to you. How are you doing?
I'm really not bad. I've got a sore throat, but it's fine. I'm just aware of what I need to do to ease it out. But other than that, I'm really good.
Wonderful. And I'm very, very excited about our topic today, relationships, because really everything in life, if you think about it, relates to relationships. You're being able to get anything done at home, at work, in your one-to-one relationships, everything, it's key. And they can sometimes be straightforward and sometimes they can be really stretched and strained, particularly at this time of the year, which is why we're particularly talking about it now. So I'm very, very, very looking forward to that.
Brilliant. And what or who do you appreciate today?
Well, I was just thinking, all of my relationships, but if I had to single out one, the one with my mother, because it's so chilled. You know, we're on the same page. It's typical. She and I, our typical length of a phone conversation is about 1 minute.
Wow.
Which is just, how are you doing? She just wants to know that I'm fine. And so that what's really good about that acceptance, the love, the acceptance is just there. So there's no need to go into some long debate. And she's really great at that, not needing to be clingy with people or whatever. And that's really useful, a skill to carry into life. So I'm very, very, very grateful for somebody you just know is there. They're 100% there for you, but they don't need to, it's like there's a real closeness without even needing to say it. It's one of those relationships that doesn't need to be articulated or anything. So I'm very, very grateful.
Oh, sounds lovely. So today we are talking about relationships. And Rasheed, at this time of year, why is it so important to have a relationship MOT?
Because like cars, that they can often break down at this time of the year. You know, if you think about it, our whole lives are driven by relationships. You're born into a family or the family that perhaps you're adopted into, the relationships there. So there are going to be certain family relationships, and then you go into school and so on. So the relationships there, relationships at college. There was relationships in all areas of our life, and then there's the partnerships and all of that kind of stuff. Or if you're in business or in the workplace, so you're surrounded by relationships. And actually, at this time of year, it becomes quite intense because if you think about it, during the Christmas period, you might be with family for a long period of time, and if you're adults, it might be the first time for a long time, in a year that you're all thrown together. So Christmas puts a lot of pressure on people. There might be, let's just take it on a silly everyday level, the pressure to go to the work Christmas party.
Yeah.
For one person, they might be really looking forward to it. For the other person, it might be the kind of thing they dread, but very often for lots of people, they feel as though they've got to go. So that puts a lot of kind of pressure, and it might well be in terms of, do I get on with these people, or there's expectation that I should get along with this, or that to be like everybody else because they socialize in this way. So that can be one pressure and so on. Or it might be a pressure to drink and you don't drink, or a pressure to really have a knees up when you might be quiet. But then the big one is then those family relationships. And of course, relationships have often got a lot of history, and of course known more so than a family relationship where maybe you didn't get on as siblings, and then maybe this has happened or this happened, and then suddenly you're around the table and all of that stuff is there again, and everyone reverts back to how they were when they were kids. So relationships are difficult. So you're right, you do need to do that MOT and check in, well, where am I now? How much time do I want to spend with people socially, in terms of family and so on, in order that I can manage this and that I can take care of myself and that I can actually be cordial and get on as best I can and try and have a good time, which is what this period of time is about. I'm being grateful.
So you mentioned just then about, when you're around the family, you kind of, or you may revert back to your childhood stuff. And as you just said that, it just reminded me that when I go back home and I'm with my family, I've actually noticed that when my mum's talking to me about something and I respond like, oh, Mum, it's like, that's my 16-year-old self. So why am I responding like that way? So sometimes it can be really easy when you're in your childhood home, when you're with your siblings, it's very easy just to revert back into the child, even though you are an adult.
Hugely.
It's autopilot, isn't it?
It's autopilot. And then depending culturally, the background, that in many cultures and in most cultures, there's a real respect for the elders and for somebody who's older than yourself. So you're very aware that even though that brother or sister is 2 years older or whatever, that kind of creates a subconscious still a pecking order, or whether you feel you could speak or whether you feel that you could challenge and all of this kind of stuff. So all of that is part of the issue too. And that often the expectations of what you should be doing, or whether you should be married now, or whether you should be doing this, or whether you're doing the right job, all of these things can subtly, overtly come into play. So I think this is where the thing that you're saying, that the self-awareness is really important, to be aware where you're at, how to take care of yourself, how much you share. Sometimes in some relationships, be careful about how much you share, because sometimes that you may well be just opening a can of worms. There might be some things that you need to keep your own counsel on. There might be some things that is also not necessarily to bring up things from the past, or this person did this, or this person, or even that this person's getting to carve the turkey and you're not. Because all sorts of stuff can come to play.
When we're talking about dynamics, we're also talking about power dynamics as well. And power dynamics can cause friction as each one or each person is trying to show their power, to say, well, no, I'm going to do it. I'm this, I'm that. And unless you know what's really going on in front of your eyes, you don't actually know how to manage it. And you could actually just fall into the hook. The
Hugely.
Hook and the liner, because you took the bait.
Completely. And I think I'm so glad you mentioned that thing about the power dynamics, because actually one of the things that could be a tip is you've got to know your own power. Yeah. And that might mean in some cases being silent, because you don't need to make a big deal. You don't need to be the person who is first there with the mum and dad's attention, or the person who's, so you've got to know your own power and know when you do need to speak up and when to be quiet, and so on. And that's really important, knowing your own power, because it might be that you're in somebody's house, you don't need to assert yourself. So you've got to be aware of also all of these nuances and other people's sensitivities as well. It brings up a lot, just down to whose house is Christmas going to be at, if you're going to spend time here or there. So my tip is also here, when it comes to relationships at Christmas, decide who you're going to be spending time with, how much time you need to spend. First of all, starting off with yourself, because that's the relationship that's really important. Then with family and with friends and so on. Make sure you do add in enough time for you to recharge and so on. And then communicate that early. Just let people know, I'm going to be spending this amount of time here, this amount of time here, and I'm going to need this time because also I've got this and this going on. If you do that warmly, and do it warmly, kindly, not, because sometimes tone is everything. Sometimes we do it defensively. Do it with a warm heart. thanks so much for the invite. I'm actually going to be spending this amount of time with you, and I'm going to be doing this and having time, blah, 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 blah. And it gives people time to adjust to that now. So I'd say do that now. Have those conversations now. Where are you going to be spending time? How much time? And don't feel as though you need to spend loads of time. It might be just a day. You know, sometimes it can just be the length of time that you're forced together with people. If you can't cope with a whole week, then don't do a whole week.
As I'm listening to you speak, I'm just wondering, you know, in like marriages, for example, what if the in-laws want you to go to them for Christmas, but you actually want to go to your own family for Christmas, but because you're married, you feel that you have to be together on that day because Christmas is so important. So let's touch on that when we come back. Guys at home, if you do have any questions for Rasheed, you can tweet at Colourful Radio. You can call on 0203 475 6878, or you can email me via the Colourful Radio website. A very apt track is Ledisi I.
Colourful Radio.
So that was Ledisi, I Blame You. And before that track, we were talking about the conflicts or the struggles, especially if you don't want to go to your in-laws for Christmas, you want to be with your own family, but because you're married, there's that whole compromising thing that may be going on. And also in relation to this track, which is by Ledisi, I Blame You, you could potentially blame your husband or wife, vice versa, depending on what the situation is, and that in itself can cause friction on Christmas Day, but in the relationship as a whole. Again, how do you navigate all of that?
I think the first thing is to realise, to be aware that all of those dynamics are going on, that one person, you know, might be very important. They've always had their whole family together, or that they've done this and they've done that. But I think that for me, the starting point is, and it's again interesting, this song title, isn't it? I Blame You. Such a great choice, you know, Lisa, because what happens, we know a lot of the time in relationships, is blame. But one of the founding principles from a perspective of coaching and a lot of personal development and in therapy as well, isn't it? Taking responsibility for your own life and your own actions. Now, of course, historically, there might have been stuff when you were very young that wasn't your responsibility. It may have been parents made those choices, or to be there or not be there, or what have you. But there comes a point where you've got to take responsibility on your life and your emotions and everything else from here on. Because if you're blaming everybody else, A, it's an easy cop-out, and B, your relationships is going to always be a very negative energy. So my first tip is take complete responsibility for who you are, your life, where you're at now. And I think that when it comes to those historical relationships with family things, you know, again, accept that most people did what they did or didn't do based on where they were, or their own doubts, fears, and so on, insecurity. So usually it's from a place of very rarely does it come from a place of really genuinely wanting to be harmful to anybody else. So that's important to remember, and it's deep, and it's very important for you to recognize. So you need to come to a point where you need to do your own healing on this and know, actually, you know what, although mum was like this, or dad was like this, or my brother was like this, or whatever is like that, that's that. Then coming to this thing about you know, who to spend time with, I think communication is very important. Be aware that, particularly, for example, this example, your newlyweds, the bride's family, the groom's family are going to want to spend time with that. So you two as a couple have that communication first of all. How do you want to do that? Is it about you spending lunch with one and dinner with the other, and then reversing it next time round? Is it that you're both going to go to your own families for Christmas Day and catch up later? That might so find out what's the strategic one that's going to be best for you individually, for you both as a unit, and for those families, mindful of the personality is concerned. Because for me, with relationships, you've got to honour yourself, you've got to honour the other person, and honour the relationship in between. That's my key here with relationships. It will really help you with any relationship. Honour you, honour the other person, and let the other person be who they are, and then honour the relationship. And if you keep that in mind with every relationship, it will really help you to come up with the strategies and with the kindness that's going to help you move forward. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Sounds really good. So, and this again is another apt track. It's Kindred, The Family Soul, and it's on Definition. So when we come, we'll listen to the track, and then we'll talk about Definition in a little bit more.
Colourful Radio.
So that was Kindred, The Family Soul, with a track called Definition. And it's apt, actually, because we're talking about relationships. And I guess it's the acknowledgement that relationships, the definition of relationships, will mean different things to different people.
So, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's powerful in itself. You know, what does somebody define as a relationship? You know, one person might think they're a relationship, another person might think they're not in a relationship, one person might think they're the person's best friend, the other person just thinks that they're just an associate. I think that when it comes to definitions, one of the things that's really important, particularly in our adulthood, is to ask ourselves, what kind of relationships do I want? So when it comes to the love life, the personal, the one-to-one relationship, what kind of person, what kind of qualities, what do I want? Because you need to know what your values are, and you need to know when they're met and when they're not met. And you need to allow that other person to also express that too. You know, here's who I am. This is what's really important to me. Here's what I expect from a relationship, and so on. I think it's really important. I think that it's important at this point, you know, we've talked a little bit about family relationships. And I think with family relationships, sometimes it's just that acceptance that, you know, this person's here, this person's there, and to give each other a space. But I think with friendships, it's slightly different, because friendships will change over a period of time and new friends may come in. And I think it's really important for you to know at this stage that you're of your life now, what kind of friends is it you need? Because it might be the friends that you had in your 20s aren't apt for you in your 30s, your 40s, or your 50s. And you might get to a point where you might be disappointed with certain relationships, or certain relationships might need to be renewed, or where people are at in their life is just different, and you need to check in with that person. Where am I at? What support do I need? And so on. And can that person give you that? That's another thing. Sometimes our expectations of people in relationship is too high. What can that person actually give you? It might be you're looking for some type of emotional support in one friend that you can't get from that friend. You either need to give that to yourself, or you might get that partly from a partner or partly from somebody else. So you've got to be really clear overall what's really important to you, the blend of things, what you need to give to yourself, what other people want from you, and to know it's a two-way street with relationships as well. But what can you give, and what can that person give? Because they may not be able to give you what it is that you want, or it might be that you've outgrown that relationship too, which I'm sure we'll touch on. So there's a lot of stuff here, but once you begin to define what you want, and that relationship that you're wanting, and that relationship you need with yourself, it helps hugely.
And I guess it's that want, but as you said, not in an expectation kind of way, but just an acknowledgement of the kind of qualities that you're looking for in regards to maybe what you need, or what you classify as having a good relationship with someone, a healthy relationship with someone. So I think that's very interesting. Now, the question today is, Christmas is the season of goodwill. Is it a good time to heal a rift? As you just said, Rasheed, people come into your life for a reason, season, or lifetime. There's that acknowledgement as well, which means that, you know, people in your childhood, they may not fit as an adult because you are different people, you've moved on, you no longer get on, whatever. However, if there is an opportunity to fix something, should people try and fix it, or is it just about letting go? I
think it's such a beautiful question. I think those things are true, isn't it? That people do come in for a reason, season, or a lifetime. I think the key thing here to remember is that what's really important is the quality of the relationship more than the duration, because who knows how long any relationship is going to last. Anything can happen at any particular time. So you might think that you're going to get a whole lifetime with somebody. I was with somebody a while ago, and I was with a client. I was speaking to a client, and she had told me that her childhood sweetheart, who she was married to, she lost very, very suddenly, very, very young. So we never know. So I think what's really important is you've got to let people know that you care, and you've really got to take care of that relationship, because we don't know. You know, sometimes it's a bit like, I see relationships a bit like a train journey. Very rare are the people who are going to be going on all the stops as you, but some people might be on some of those stops as you. So just try and make it as qualitatively as good as you can. I think that's the most important thing. And to find out where are they at in their journey, how can you be supportive of them? Because sometimes even in a one-to-one relationship, it might be that they've outgrown you and you've got to let that person go. And I think that sometimes when you have difficulties in relationships, let's say but at home or work or whatever, and it happens all the time, use that difficult situation to ask yourself to step back. Where am I at? How do I feel about this? Is this relationship working? Does it need some attention? But I think that they can be fixed, but it requires that dialogue. Where are you at? I'm so sorry. And to share, I'm really so sorry that I had to have a good conversation with a friend of mine whose life has changed quite a lot earlier on this year. And I said, look, I'm really mindful. I haven't been in touch. It's been a very busy time. How are you doing? Where are you at? And we had to kind of rebuild that friendship. But also part of that was actually realizing that there probably will be more of a a distance now than there is before. We're still very close, but actually the nature of our lives have actually changed. And so sometimes you've got to kind of accept that things will really change, but the key is to do it with a good heart and to just be honest. Here's where I'm at. Where are you at? And give that person the time. Don't just blame or this isn't just me. Ask them, where are you at? What's really important to you now? How are you feeling? And then you usually find lots of stuff can be mended. I'm so sorry about that when we were 16, when we were kids. Be honest, but be open. And find out their perspective, because we often see life purely from our own lens. That person did me wrong and so on. That's not the full story. It's part of the story. It's not the whole story. It's never the whole story.
And it's from one perspective, isn't it? So it's about a two-way dialogue. But also as well, there's something about consistency of a relationship, because, we all have our own lives. And so maybe one friend might be more busy than the other one, or vice versa. And so maybe the consistency that you saw a friend may actually change over time, but it doesn't mean necessarily that you've fallen out. It literally just means that there isn't the same amount of time that you can give that person, and therefore, but then it shouldn't change anything, because when you do meet, it should actually just be like you saw each other yesterday. That, I think, is the value of a really good friendship. That's
right. But there will be times where in any relationship that you might need to move on for it. Some of them you might need to accept. This is my mother, this is my brother, this is this is that, and try our best to be as kind. And space is really useful here, you see, because sometimes we feel that we need to be with somebody 24/7, and it might be the fact that you're trying to expecting that's causing the problem. So you've got to find out what space and time regularity thingy works for absolutely everybody. How often do you need to see them? How much space, how much time is useful for you, for them, and so on? And are they serving you any more, particularly when it comes to one-to-one relationship? Because it might be that you've been accepting things that are just completely unacceptable. No.
That's interesting. Also, the quote for today in the Daily Nudge is, "Assumptions are the termites of relationships," and that's by Henry Winkler. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of that, assumptions. I think that it is to assume. And because you just don't know what's going on. Let's say somebody hasn't called you about something. All sorts of things could have gone on. There could have been all sorts of things could have been going on for somebody. So we do make a lot of assumptions, and then we play things out in our mind, and we link it to that time when this happened, or that time when that happened. And also, disappointment is directly related to our expectations. So what are your expectations of others? It's important, really, first and foremost, for you to have high expectations of yourself, and to be aware that more you could increase your awareness of where the other person is at, that's going to help you more to know the reality of what's actually kind of going on and what works for you. And does that relationship need some attention? Who are the people, I'd say practically, who are the people you should be spending a little bit more time with? Who are the people who you should be having a conversation with? Who are the people that you feel now that maybe you should be spending a little bit less time with? And is it a time in your life to allow in the new, that you're really opening the door to new relationships, friendships at work or what have you, or people who are nourishing to you? Because that's incredibly important. Because sometimes you can be stuck in relationships where they're negative and the people are dragging you down, or they're holding you back. And so sometimes that does require management. And, I'm sure we're going to return to that topic again, because it's very, very deep. And on this self-central journey, you are responsible for that. You're responsible for making peace with your past, but you're also responsible for making way for your future right here in the present.
That's really good, actually. Yeah, I love when you say that. And just going back to your train journey kind of thing, it makes me think of that as well, because there are stops along the way. So, and those stops could be your past, your present, and your future. And some people may be with you on to one point, maybe 2 points, maybe 3 points, maybe more. But it's just been on that journey, the right here, the right now, the present.
It's like being a parent, that point where the parents realise the kids get to their teens, you still love them, but the magical thing is you let them go, you let them be. And remember, nobody is your property. Nobody is your property, even your baby or your partner. Nobody is your property. They're on their journey. The more you can own that they are on their journey, and just love them, wish them the best, whether you're with them or whether you're not with them, or whether they choose to leave you, that's their prerogative. And the more you can accept that, the more richness it will be, and the less disappointment. It's a very powerful thing, because you may have empowered somebody to really find their true self or their true love, and how many times you thought this is the right relationship, and it's not. it's right for that time. It's not right forever.
Yeah. And I think the important thing again as well is the core conditions, which is self-awareness, self-acceptance and self-love. So within the dynamics of relationships, especially ones where it's tense or there's some friction, before you go to the other person, do the blame game, it's take stock, think about what happened from your perspective, think about maybe how you could have handled it differently. And if you feel that there is something that you want to say, you can say it, but again, use self-love and self-acceptance to be mindful. Use your self-awareness to understand the tone and the kind of words that you're using, because that can affect how it's received. And so if you're trying to heal a rift, it's not going to be healed. The response from the other person would be to feel that they need to defend themselves based upon how you've communicated it.
Wonderful. And I think the secret here is have those conversations genuinely from the heart. When they're had from the heart, it's really powerful. And it reminds me of the last song that we're going to play whilst I'm here. It's beautiful because this character is talking about how she wakes up and she realised that she's got to kind of move on and let things go and reconnect to herself.
And that song is Let It Flow by Toni Braxton. Rasheed, thank you very much. You've been great as usual. Again, guys, if you want to listen back on a podcast, you can do that. Rasheed is here every single Sunday at 11 a.m. So when you go back onto the Colourful Radio podcast, just select 11 a.m. and you can hear all of his nudges and gems that he has given over the past 6 months. The question again is, Christmas is the season of goodwill. Is it a good time to heal a rift? Let me know. Tweet at Colourful Radio, call 0203 475 6878 or email me via the Colourful Radio website. I will see you at the top of the hour.